What's up, everyone? It's your boy Joey Medina, aka Carl Weezer 69, back for the first time in 2024, again to bring you guys another edition of the Delta Omega Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. Boys, I gotta be honest, I am super excited to be back, as I'm sure many of you are during this dark footballless time. But the wait is almost over. Yes, in addition to the excitement of cranking out another one of these podcasts, the jubilation I feel about a rookie draft being less than 30 days away is absolutely immeasurable, as this particular draft in particular has been one I've been eagerly waiting for over a year. The best part is the cherry on top, whatever you want to say, is once we hit the draft, training camp pretty much starts right away. Then the preseason games will be played. And then before you know it, that first Thursday in September will arrive and we will be all at full torque as the Chiefs play the Ravens on that first Thursday night. I cannot wait. If that does not get you hyped, maybe this podcast will. We've got a pretty interesting show today. We will be grading each team's off season, and we'll be pretty much identifying what the needs are, what we can expect from each team this year, and then we'll follow it up with the classic mock draft as we always do because the draft is less than a month away. I cannot be more excited. Let's just keep going and let's dive right into it. Um, let's just start with the reigning defending champion Samuel Adams, managed by Trevor Westine, of course. Uh, Maybe perhaps coming off a somewhat surprising championship run, given the strength of some of the teams last year. The biggest question surrounding this team coming into the offseason was what would it look like come fall? Uh, Trevor has the second oldest average roster age. I think it's around 27 and a half years old. I think I'm not alone in sharing the idea that we were all curious to see if Trevor would blow it up this offseason after bringing home what I like to call the Max Westfall Cup. Um, yeah, and we got a little bit of an answer and maybe a little bit of clarity when he sent Derrick Henry plus away to Hunter in exchange for the 109, I believe. Um, Not the full team blow up we've seen in the past, but it's a strong sign, maybe a pretty good indicator that Trev is slowly but surely trying to retool. Um, Plus, he doesn't really, if I might be wrong, but I don't think he owns any of his own picks for the next couple years. I think it makes a lot of sense to hold tight right now and maybe wait for the right offer instead of going for the sell the whole team for scraps right away. So uh, I kind of see where he's coming from based on the actions he's taken in the offseason so far. Other moves he's made this offseason consisted of Antonio Gibson for, I think, a third and some fab, and then selling Michael Thomas for some fab, which are not insignificant moves by any means, but insignificant for me to dive deep on, especially when I have 11 more teams to go through. Overall, I think I'm going to give Trevor a B for the offseason. I think he made a good move. I'm a fan of the Henry trade because it kind of feels like the first in return window for Henry, even though he's one of those ageless wonders kind of guys, I guess. Feels like that window of getting a first round pick for Derrick Henry was closing a little faster. Um, well, maybe not faster than we thought, but this might have been his last chance, is what I'm trying to say, of acquiring a first in return for Derrick Henry. Um, when I take a look at this team, it's middle of the pack in all position groups other than tight end, where if I'm going to be bold, I'd probably say he's number one in the league at the tight end position with Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid as a good tight end duo. As far as other team needs go, I'd say the best available wide receiver in the draft, as I would imagine 109 is likely the beginning of the second and third tier run on receivers. Other team needs, if I'm looking at, would be picks, and more picks during the season. Selling off vets when they're actually wanted and needed, when people are trying to make a championship run um, during the season. And he doesn't really have that many picks. So I just would say let's start getting some more picks and let's start maybe retooling or maybe going into a full rebuild is probably what I would say. Moving on, we'll go to the next team, which is Liam, manager of the Poverty franchise, the first of his name, the king of the sandals and the swimming pool and the dab pins, lord of the seven dispensaries. Okay, I get it. That was cringy. That was, that wasn't it. But I was bored when I was making the script for this, and I thought it'd be kind of funny. But anyways, back onto it. Liam made one of the can't believe I said that. Liam made one of the most intriguing moves this offseason, um, all the way in January, and it was uh, league altering, league shifting. I don't know, but it was a pretty significant one as he sent Bijan Robinson away in exchange for Jalen Waddle, Travis Etienne, and Evan Ingram. I really think this is an incredible trade. Um, Obviously, we all know this is what it would have taken to trade for Bijan, and it probably sucks to trade away Bijan. Um, but I really like this haul, and I think it really gives him depth of epic proportions. In case his team catches a little bit of the injury bug this year, um, I'll probably give him an A for an offseason grade. And when I'm looking at team needs, he's kind of set in my opinion. The only thing I can think of maybe is entertaining offers for some of the veterans that are buried on his depth chart that he doesn't really need. Because he doesn't have like hardly any picks. I think he only has a few thirds, a couple thirds, something like that. And he's got the oldest roster per average age. So yeah, that would probably be the only thing I'm looking for in terms of in-season trades if I'm Liam. Is just maybe cashing in for a second or a couple thirds here and there, if that makes sense at the time. Obviously you don't want to give a contending team another veteran player to help them compete with him for the championship this year. But if it makes sense, I'd say that would be the only thing I would address if I was Liam. Let's move on to Irv, who finished in third place. Irv made no moves this offseason, but that maybe is what I like the most about his offseason. He's had a steady hand, predictably so, as his running backs, the whole deal with Kyron and Achan, who have taken maybe unsurprised or surprising dips in value this offseason during the draft season. Um, for whatever reason, they took a little bit of a value hit at some point, and he didn't panic sell to his credit. And then I take a look a little more closely at his roster. I see virtually no holes and a bunch of solid win now pieces. There might not be any sexy top options at each position outside of Jamar Chase, but this is a team that I verbally uttered, "Oh crap," when I saw his roster because I own his 2025 first round pick. Not banking on it at all being in the top seven, that's for sure. This team is pretty good everywhere and then pretty deep as I was looking over it. Um, and I really think like holding his water um, was the move. I mean, I didn't really expect him to make a earth-shattering trade. I guess he did last year with DJ Moore, but I really kind of dig what he did this offseason by doing nothing. And with that being said, I think I'm going to give him an A minus for the offseason grade. And I think I'm only adding the minus because he didn't really make a flashy radical change, which is not required in an offseason, but it kind of lacks when I stack them up, it lacks I don't know, gumption, chutzpah, whatever you want to say. I don't even know those are the right words, but um, there's other ones that I like better. Is what I should have said. But yeah, uh, the point of this is look out for Irv this year. This guy is good. I expect him to make a deep run this year. All right. Next up, we have Riley. I'm giving him an A grade for the cheesy name change of my Mayor Bynum. Wait, Mayor Bynum digs my chub. Okay, that's pretty funny. Whatever. I do like those pun ones that are just way too long with no spaces where you maximize all the 25 characters. Yeah, that's a great name. Great name. But Riley has been, when I was making this list, he's the um, metaphorical mountain in the distance. I knew I had to climb eventually. But now he's staring me in the face as to the surprise of no one, was the most active trader in the offseason, probably. If not, he was like top two or three. But let's climb that mountain. Let's just get into it. Starting with the three-team trade between Hunter, Riley, and myself, which saw Riley send away AJ Brown and Trey McBride for Hollywood Brown, Michael Mayer, two 26 ones, two 24 threes, and a 24 2, and then 200 fab on top of that. It appears we're at the point at Riley's cycle where he sells all of his players for picks. But I will say this time feels a little bit different, as he seems to be willing to sacrifice playoff appearances, which he's been able to achieve over the past few years, uh, and trade that in for a complete rebuild and perhaps look towards building a super team the next, I don't know, 2 to 5 years, depending on how the picks pan out for him. Uh, this when I look at this trade, it's kind of interesting, especially when you factor in this was before the real NFL draft, which meant the Raiders had yet to select Brock Bowers with the 13th overall pick. Um, so it looks a little bit different than it did back when it was actually made. Um, Personally, I won't be faulting Riley for this move, but I'm sure some of you thought it was a little questionable, uh, considering he had a pretty decent roster. And, maybe that's all you really need. Just get in the dance and roll the dice to see if you can pull home a championship. However, I do respect the rebuild, but I do fear that this waiting game will be long. And history has shown Riley being an antsy, um, take action into his own hands kind of manager, where if this is 2 years down the road and early returns are okay, is he just going to ship off all of those picks that he has in 2026 for more of a complete team then, and maybe try his luck at a championship a little bit earlier than his rebuild would suggest? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But it'll be a fun thing to watch, especially as this season ends and next off season starts. Um, yeah, moving up to his next trade, was a four-team trade with Lewis, Kyle, and Hunter, where he sent Hollywood Brown, who he just got and we just talked about, and a 25 second round pick for the 112 in 2024. Uh, in my opinion, this is the most insignificant return of this four-team trade. But just looking at his side of it, the return isn't the greatest in my opinion. Um, you have a guy in Hollywood that's paired with Patrick Mahomes now. Say what you would about the target competition, Kelsey, Rice, Worthy there now. Um, I still think he's going to be solid. I don't know if this is a guy. It wouldn't have been a long term play for Riley if he would have kept him. So I get why you move him. But I think this guy's going to be pretty solid this year. Like, he's a pretty talented guy, paired with the best quarterback in the league, plus a second round pick, in exchange for what I would like to call a glorified two in the 112. Obviously, it's still a first rounder, and I think it's masked with a first round tag, but one team probably, or sorry, 112 probably seems better than what it actually is because of that tag. Versus it's one pick away from being in the second round. So it would have been like a second rounder for Hollywood and a second, if that makes sense, yeah, I don't know. I don't really like it. I think it's a little dicey. I think he needs to have a pretty good hit with the 112 for it to be worthwhile. Because I feel like Hollywood could probably be somewhere in the 20s, wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 40, which is probably what he's getting at 112 if we're talking about best available, who's going to still be there at 112. Um, yeah, I mean, I see what he's doing, but in terms of a year from now, if we're looking back at this trade, I'm thinking it's more likely that the Hollywood side wins this deal unless he hits a home run with the 112. Next deal he made, uh, where is it? I think it was the Gibson trade, where I think it was a third. We talked about with Trev. It's a little bit insignificant, especially with, um, I think I think he's playing for the Patriots. I could be wrong, so sorry if I get that wrong. But Ramondre got signed. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a yeah, trade away Gibson while you can. Maybe Trev gets maybe a little bit of a value upgrade if Gibson plays well and catches the ball a lot. But it's a little bit insignificant for me to talk about. Multiple fab trades with Lewis, a Chark for Miles Sanders deal that I don't think a single one of you guys are interested in me breaking down. I certainly am not. Uh, but when we look at Riley's offseason as a whole, uh, said it before, he's decided to forego upcoming seasons to potentially build a dynasty here in the next couple years. He's got 4 firsts and 4 seconds in 2026, which is pretty ridiculous. And I have to give him some credit for picking a direction. You know, there's a couple teams out there that are sort of in the middle of what they're doing. Can they contend? Maybe this year. Could they blow it up? Yeah, but they're just kind of like in the middle of the road. Haven't decided whether they want to go back to the side they were already in or want to cross over to the other side to paint you a picture there. In terms of a grade, I'm going to give Riley a C, and I think that might be a little bit harsh, but this is just the reality of starting a rebuild. It looks a little bit cloudy at the beginning. Um, the returns he got weren't the best, but they also weren't the worst either, you know? So it's kind of like C was a perfect average middle ground where I see the direction, I like where he's going, but the returns weren't insanely good for him, you know? So that's probably why I'm going with the C here. But like I said before, respect the rebuild grind. Um, it's going to take a while, maybe a year, maybe two, for it to really pay dividends. But I think if you can wait and play the long game, I think that would be um, pretty cool. As his team would be pretty sick to look at here in the next couple years after all those picks are made. Next team we're talking about Lewis, loose ends and a loose asshole. What a name! What a name! Lewis is a notorious trader. I don't have to tell you guys that. I will be disregarding fab trades as I have been from this video already. He did, I will say, make a couple of interesting player moves this offseason, starting with the trade with Bijan, which we already talked on. With Liam's eval, he gave up a ton. ETN, Waddle, and Ingram, if in case you need a reminder. But in return, you got perhaps the most valuable non-wide receiver fantasy asset, um, which you guys know will give him one of the most young, uh, like stacked starting lineups maybe this league has ever seen. Uh, I think it's Brees, Bijan, Jefferson, Lamb, Walker, and then Devontae Smith, who we'll talk about here in a second. It was a hefty price for Bijan, but only time will tell if it'll pay off. Like I said before, I love it for Liam. I really like it for Lou. It's one of those kind of win-wins based on what you're looking for. But as time goes on, there's definitely going to be a winner to that trade, and there's definitely going to be a loser to that trade. Uh, right now, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to watch as the season unfolds, as both will be competing for a championship this year. Uh, under the other impactful trade Lewis made was trading for Smith, as I mentioned, Devontae Smith, uh, which I kind of like because I think he traded him for Michael Pittman and Darnell Washington. Overall, pretty good move. I think Lewis gets a guy he really likes on his favorite team, and I like Pittman. I think he's solid, but I think he got an upgrade at the position um, because Pittman got a more receiving competition and was a little bit older than Smith. So I like this move for Lewis as Smitty's got some tread left on the tires for the foreseeable future. Um, but that's about all he really did in terms of player movement that was significant. I'd have to give Lewis a B minus on the offseason. The B minus is because of the hefty price. Probably giving up a tight end one, borderline tight end one, and Evan Ingram, a top, I don't know, 10 dynasty running back in ETN, and probably a top 20 receiver at minimum for Waddle. I probably have him higher than that, but 20s minimum for dynasty wide receivers. So that's a lot to give up. Getting Bijan in return is pretty cool though, uh, which is why he still has a B and didn't creep into the C's. In terms of team needs, I think he needs to find more depth if he can. I mean, I don't know how much he has left to trade. I forgot that Riley, I didn't put this in the podcast at all, but I forgot that Riley and Lou have this deal when the 2027 picks come in. I think we all know about that one. And then maybe in terms of position groups, I think he needs to upgrade at QB and tight end because I think he's middle of the pack at the quarterback position. And I would probably say he's it, probably last at the tight end position in the league. At best, he's like top like 10 through 12 in the tight end position. Those are two positions I could see him trying to upgrade as he pushes for a championship run after going all in for these last couple seasons. Very excited to see how Lewis's season will play out because if he avoids the injury bug, I really do think that this team might be a little unstoppable. There's some good teams this year, but if he's healthy, and those guys play like they're supposed to play, he's going to be a tough out for sure. Up next, we've got Throbbing Hawk, managed by Kyle. Kyle made a few moves this offseason, most notably trading Tyreek Hill away in the 4-team deal. I think with Lewis, Hunter, and Riley, if I remember correctly. And I think he got Aaron Jones, Michael Pittman, and Hollywood Brown in return. When I look at the return, I see 3 patch fillers and depth pieces that'll really come in handy if he needs them. As I anticipate he'll go for another championship push this year. Um, the Tyreek deal in particular, I think it's similar to Trevor's move for when he traded away Derrick Henry. I think because we see another 30-something-year-old guy being traded away before any dips in value really happen. But unlike Derrick Henry, obviously, because wide receivers have probably jumped running backs at this point in fantasy, Tyreek definitely holds a higher level of value, at least for now. I mean, I think the dude put up like 20 plus fantasy points a game last year. Maybe not in half PPR, but in PPR for sure. Um, the idea remains the same as Trevor's idea to trade Henry. Not that the first round window would be closed anytime soon for Hill. Maybe it would, maybe it isn't. The thing is, those a 3-for-1 in return for a 30-something-year-old player doesn't happen a lot. And I think the window was closing to really cash in on Hill, potentially as early as next year. I don't know. So I like the return. Um, Definitely depth is huge. Uh, you just never know what's going to happen during the season. That's why I like depth. I know some of you out there don't love depth. You just want the high ceiling guys, but injuries happen and you got to be prepared for that sometimes, especially if you're really serious about going for a championship. Um, Looking at another move he made, at another move Kyle made, was trading for Patrick Mahomes, his golden boy, and as I said before, the best quarterback in the league. Which, funny enough, I know Kyle's a big Chiefs fan, but he has a pretty good stack with the Chiefs right now, where he's got Rice and he's got Hollywood Brown and he's got Isaiah Pacheco. That'll be pretty fun, especially as a Chiefs fan for Kyle, as not only will his team be putting up a ton of points, but his fantasy team will also be putting up a bunch of points as a byproduct. Um, he gave up Justin Herbert in a 2026 one and got Mahomes in the 206, I believe, which is a decent price to pay. I really don't hate it at all. You're tearing up at quarterback and you're tearing down around in the draft, and you get to pick in this year's draft while sacrificing a first round pick 2 years down the road. So I kind of like it. I kind of like it for Kyle there, especially for as much as he loves Mahomes. Um, Pretty good deal. Last deal he made was insignificant compared to the Tyreek and Mahomes deals, but he did trade Pat Fryermuth to me for the 210. I think adding another pick in the second round is nice, especially for Kyle, who has a history of hitting on some late round guys. And I'm sure he's got a couple sleepers this year that he's excited about targeting with that pick. But we'll see how it works out. I think I'm going to give Kyle a B plus plus this offseason because, uh, and it would have been an A, but Tyreek lowers overall ceiling, I think, for this specific year, although I do like the deal. But I'd still call it a successful offseason, added depth, added his guys. In terms of team needs, I think just ceiling raisers if you can find a guy with um, that's electric, that is putting up a ton of points, and you can get them for an affordable price. I think you do that, obviously. But that's just a testament to his team. He really doesn't need much. That was the only thing I could really think of. Pretty good offseason from Kyle overall. Moving on, we've got Dakota's team, Hurts to Palmer face. Dakota is in the middle of a retool, and he really didn't make any significant deals. Only a fab deal with Lewis for Parker Washington this year. Um, when I look at this team, I see an overall middle of the road team, sort of. There are a couple good players, a couple great players, like Jalen Hurts, Sam Laporta, Nico Collins. But other than that, I kind of see a lot of question marks. I'm not sure if this team will increase its overall value in 2024 or if it'll lose a little bit. Either way, uh, I think he'll have to pick a direction at some point during the season, whether he'll want to sell for parts and more picks, or if he'll want to shift some of his assets away, and maybe create a team that can maybe compete a little bit sooner than it would if he just stays put or cashes in, obviously. Speaking of that, he's got a couple of seconds and thirds as dart throws this year to maybe hit on some guys. He hit on some guys last year, so maybe he can carry that over to this year. Um, to find some impact guys that maybe could help him this year and maybe provide some clarity for him in which direction his team needs to go, I guess. Um, in terms of the grade for the offseason, I'd probably give it a D, and it might be a little harsh, but he really didn't do much. He didn't add more draft capital or players. He's decided to stay put. I really do like the best part of this team that I like is his impressive 2025 draft capital. Uh, needs He kind of needs consistent playmakers at every position outside of tight end because of Sam Laporta. So I'll be interested. I think this team will be active during the season, maybe active during the draft as well. Um, but only time will tell. But I'll be definitely interested because this is a team that needs to pick a direction, in my opinion, sooner rather than later. Because there's teams that are rebuilding super heavily. There are teams that are win now super heavily, and then there's that middle ground where you're not one or the other, and you're just kind of like, oh, I'll take my 5-6 wins and then pack it up for next year. And that's why I'm giving him a D this off season. Moving on, we've got No Pain Rogaine, managed by Tommy. Only trade this offseason was cashing in on Michael Pittman for Dallas Goedert, Romeo Dobbs, and Jonathan Mingo, which, if I'm being honest, I really don't hate. True, none of these guys really jump off the page when I'm looking at the return, but I kind of like the 3 dice rolls for one kind of solid piece in Pittman. And I kind of like the strategy because he rolls the dice. Um, maybe one, maybe two. Maybe that's the hope is one of them increases their value, and then you can sell them off for more than you paid for. Um, and it makes a lot of sense for like a team as far away from a championship as Tommy is right now. Just a couple guys he likes, a couple young guys, and a pretty solid tight end in Goddard. To really help. I don't know. Maybe one of them hits and gives them um, a little more value, like I said, and all that for the price of Michael Pittman, which, like I said, he's solid, just doesn't fit the Tommy timeline anymore, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, that was his only move. As far as offseason grade, I'll probably give him a C. Uh, the move wasn't bad, but like I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it was fantastic either. Um, Overall, when I look at this team, I see a team outside of a quarterback, outside of Josh Allen, I should say, that is towards the bottom in every position group, um, and even draft capital. Um, I will say his 2025, I think he's got 2 firsts, including his own. So I think this year could be chalked, and he could be focusing on a pretty big rebuild, as he could probably get a solid foundational piece in the 2025 draft. terms of this year, he's got a couple late seconds and a third to maybe find an impact player. Um, but if I had to bet, I'd say 2024, like I said, is probably chalked since he has his own first. And, let's play for next year or get some more picks. I think what Tommy needs to do is just play the fantasy finance game, win deals here and there, little by little, and I think that'll accelerate his rebuild, in my opinion. Following Tommy, we have the waiver wire Warriors, of course, managed by Jansen. Jansen was quite active this offseason as he's embracing his rebuild. He sold off a then active Darren Waller and DK Metcalf for a 25-1 and 2 and a 24-3. He also made a move to get into the first round this year by sending a 25-1 and a 24-2, which he then proceeded to move up to the 5 and then traded the 5 away to move back to the 7. He also got Herbert and future one for Mahomes in the 206, as we talked about in Kyle's eval. That's a lot of information real fast that I don't think you retained. So I'll try to sum it up a little bit here. He ended up with the 7 and 11 this year, 225 twos and a 3, I think, when it was all said and done. And he traded away the 105, 109, 206, 210, 303, and a 26-1. In layman's terms, 2 1s, 2 2s, and a 3 for 3 1s, 2 2s, and a 3 for those keeping score at home. Take that for what you will. You might think at first glance it seems like he got screwed because he gave up a little bit more than maybe he got in return. But I do believe Jansen was being intentional with some of his moves this year. I think he made a big play for 5 as he maybe thought he had somebody in mind. And then when he realized it, I think he was like, I think I can get some value out of 5 and still get my guy here at 7, which is why I think he moved and picked up an extra first. He still has his first and 3 2s next year to go along with his 2 firsts this year. So this rebuild's starting to look pretty good in terms of draft capital, if I might say so. But when you look at his roster as of now, it's a good thing he's got that draft capital because he's towards the bottom in the league at every position group right now. But if he can hit on a couple picks this year and then a couple guys next year, I think this team could be pretty good, and maybe even perhaps if he hits really well this year, could be ahead of schedule potentially. Because his roster really doesn't look that good this year. So if he doesn't hit, then he's probably going to be towards the bottom. And I would anticipate that that's kind of what he wants. If I had to guess, he probably wants to tank for Ollie, being a big OSU fan as he is for 2025. Similar to Tommy, I think Jansen needs to play the fantasy football finance game, minuscule deals, increase value. That's the only way to speed it up if you can just build little by little. Instead of making one big flashy move, But overall, I do like this offseason for Jansen. I'd probably put it B. I mean, a lot of movement, didn't get the most return, but I really think like I said before, I think he was being intentional with it, and I like the moves that he made personally. Coming up next, we've got Hunter, who I think we all agree is the clear winner of this offseason. Hunter's currently last all time in all time wins. And I think with the help of Riley and me facilitating deals, I think he decided enough is enough. And he was very aggressive this offseason, which I think was really cool to see. He had a DK Metcalf, a retired guy, AJ Brown, Trey McBride, Tyreek Hill, and Derrick Henry. To pair up with AR, Jahmyr Gibbs, Drake London, T, Godwin, and plus more. You guys get the picture. This is a loaded lineup. It for sure should be on the short list of championship contenders this year. He used a lot of his draft capital that he's been storing up over the years to cash in on all of those players that I just listed. But the most impressive thing I think I've got to say is that he managed to keep at least one first at each of the next 2 drafts as well, which is incredible. Maybe he'll cash those in during the off season. Maybe maybe he'll just hold on to him so he can add some more young guys to his team. Either way, uh, I think you guys would agree with me that this was an absolute smash of an offseason for Hunter this year. So I have to give him an A+ offseason grade. Um, I look at the team and I see he ranks top 5 in every position group in the league. Um, Probably the closest thing to a playoff lock in June that we've seen. Um, Excellent offseason, and just goes to show that if you find the right deals in the offseason, you could take your team that should be picking number 3 overall this year and then take it to perhaps a top 3 team in the league if you pulled the league. Well done, Hunter. Great offseason, A+. Moving on, we have myself. Um, no secret, rebuild has been the name of the game for over a year now. Started the offseason with 7 firsts this year, and as you guys know, a lot has changed since then. Traded the 109 for a 25-1 and what turned out to be Pat Fryermuth. Traded the 105, 112, 312 for the 103. Traded back for the 105 plus the 204 and 303 for the 107, 111 and a 25 second in totals. In total for those lost. 103, 105, 204, Pat Fryermuth, 303, and Irv's 2025 1 in exchange for the 107, the 111, the 112, the 210, the 312, and a 25 second. So I think that's relatively even in and out return to giving up assets when it was all said and done. Um, that and then you have to factor in the 102, the 106, and the 202 that I already had in the bag before making those moves. Um, this draft in particular should be playing a pivotal part in my rebuild process, um, which is really exciting. Like I said at the beginning, I've been waiting for this draft for a long time. Um, yeah, it should be fun. My whole basis on moves this offseason was trying to trade for guys that I wanted in the draft, which is pretty cool. I think I did a decent job at that. In terms of grade, unbiasedly, I think I'm going to give myself a B+. I wanted to trade up for guys, like I said, that I wanted, and maybe trade down in tiers towards the end of the first round into the early second. That was kind of my whole strategy. And then it's not really a significant move, but adding Fryermuth was at the top of my list. Not Fryermuth in particular, but definitely trying to strengthen the tight end room. Was definitely at the forefront of my priorities. Yeah, when I take a look at my team, I look at the team needs. I still think my tight end room could use a little bit of work, and obviously my running back room is crap. So that will definitely be two needs. Probably just best available players is probably what I'm thinking about in the draft. I'll be expecting a jump in wins this year, up to my rookies to see how much that jump really is. But yeah, I feel like I'm in a good spot heading into the draft in this rebuild. Um, yeah, moving on. Lastly, we come to Max, aka Curled Toes, who, not too shockingly, has a transaction history similar to the number of Super Bowls that the Titans have, which is none. However, Max picks 3 times in the first round, 3 times in the second round, and you guessed it, 3 times in the third round. So just by doing nothing, it will, without a doubt, almost make his team doubly as valuable during the draft. Honestly, I have to give Max an F. I feel bad for moves just because he didn't make any. Um, but once you have the draft, I think his grade would be a little bit different as an offseason as a whole. Um, and I think like adding Marv and like Bowers and like whoever's there at 8, um, I think that'll probably make his offseason probably towards the upper third of the league, if I had to guess, just because those guys are really interesting and really impactful guys that are supposed to be, I guess they're projected to be as when they step into the league. Um, Max really just needs everything. We all know that. If he continues his rebuild, Um, be interesting to see how many wins he gets this year when he rebuilds, because we'll see exactly where he's at. Because he's never really been a big trader, so it's just going to be built through the farm. Um, so yeah, if he can rattle off 4 or 5 wins, I'd say that's a pretty successful season for Max. Um, well, that's everybody. I'm going to recap based on grades. What my overall rankings were for the offseason. Starting at 12, we had Max, 11, Dakota, 10, Tommy, number 9, Riley, Jansen at 8, Lewis at 7, Trevor at 6, me at 5, Kyle at 4, Irv at 3, Liam at 2, and Hunter at 1 as the best offseason in the league. Agree to disagree. Just the way I blindly ranked them and gave them grades, and then I went back through and then ranked them. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, Pretty entertaining off season as a whole. I got to say, we were all really active. A lot to change, and I'm very excited to see how it'll play out this year in the league. Now, let's head to the um, mock draft. Um, so, without further ado, starting at the 1-1, uh, Max on the board. Uh, 1 second. Max picks Marvin Harrison Jr. Uh, Marv has the Marv has the aura of Bijan Robinson or Brees Hall, but just at the wide receiver position. He's been the consensus 101 since, gosh, probably for a year now. And I think the only reason he wouldn't be the pick for Max is if Max really has like a big ass boner for either Roma Dunze or Malik Neighbors. That is the only way, and even then, I'm not so sure you pass up on Marv for any reason. So I'm chalking 101 as Marvin Harrison Jr. 102 and 103 both belong to me. I think these are easy picks for myself as I gladly pick the 2 remaining big 3 receivers. Um, I've been thinking about maybe entertaining another like Bowers or something, but I really don't think I should complicate it, and I should probably keep it simple and just pick the two of the best 3 wide receiver prospects we've seen um, in our league's history. You know, they're definitely in the top 10, that's for sure, all time rookie receiving prospects. Um, at least in the last 5 years. I think that's pretty safe to say. So that means Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze in this situation um, come to my team. Uh, Form probably one of the best young receiving cores I can think of. I'm pretty pumped about that. Moving on to 104. Here's where I think, out of the top 5, I think this is the one pick that I think is up for debate in terms of not chalked already. Do I think it is? I think it's like 70% top 5 is already set in stone. Um, but I really think that Max needs to make an interesting decision here. Uh, the name of the game is generational here for Max. The question is, which one is he going to go? Is he go generational tight end or generational quarterback? I think every draft has Bowers here, and I think I would personally agree with that take. Taking a tight end in the top 5, kind of a pause for caution. Some people are like me, I would probably be fine with it, especially because I've already picked a couple times and got wide receivers. But top 5 for a tight end is a little risky. I know Bowers is an absolute freak, but I just, when you're putting up potentially 6 points a week, I think you want a little bit more out of the number 4 overall pick personally. Um, you know, um, and I don't think Max really takes stock in what happened with Kyle Pitts because it really wasn't Kyle Pitts' fault. But you do have to think about it. Will the Raiders use him the way he should be used in terms of Bowers? Um, I guess also the same could be said for quarterback if Max decides to go with Caleb, because I really think those are the 2 guys he's deciding on here. Just because I think if he really wants Caleb, I think he's going to have to pick him here at 4, because I don't know if he'll be there at 8, if I'm being honest. Um, this is one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen. Excellent situation, probably the best situation for a rookie quarterback. Um, and I think for a team like Max, who's got Baker Mayfield at quarterback right now, I think this is a great foundational piece. Uh, we've seen teams like Tommy who have Josh Allen and nothing else really that still can rattle off 6 wins a year just because they have that one quarterback that's putting up 30 points a game or 20 points a game or whatever it is. Um, I think yeah, to for other options, I think it's too soon in the rebuild for running backs. I wouldn't hate another receiver, but if he wants to go another receiver after the big three, I would suggest a trade down. Um, yeah, but I feel like you can't go wrong here. I feel like it's Bowers, uh, but I do think if he wants Caleb, I think this is the point in the draft to take Caleb, in my opinion. Um, yeah, I think that's all I need to say there. 105 and 106, I'm back up twice in a row. I have myself taking Jonathan Brooks. RB1 at 5 is unheard of in our rookie draft histories, and it's a huge need for me. And I have Caleb Williams going as well at the 106. Brooks has great draft capital. Panthers traded up for him. Like I said, running back's a pressing need. Checks off a lot of the boxes. Should be able to get on the field and be number one back and get every opportunity to get a bunch of carries, which I like a lot. Caleb and the quarterback position isn't exactly a pressing need for me as I've got Kyler and I'm not out on Bryce yet. I'm going to give Bryce another year. And then Derek Carr's like a throwaway, decent enough third quarterback if I need him. Or maybe he's better than Bryce. Who knows? But anyways, the name of the game here is best available, and Caleb Williams, of course, is the number one overall pick in Superflex drafts. Um, like I said, this guy is up there with Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck in terms of quarterback prospects. And I outlined the incredible situation he has in Chicago. And you factor in I just drafted a receiver from Chicago at the number 3 with Rome Odunze. It's a really attractive stack for me to make, especially when I just drafted 2 wide receivers and drafted a running back already. I think this would be an okay time to go for Caleb Williams, and that's why I've got him um, going at number 6 to myself. Uh, Number 7, at the 107, we got Jansen. Uh, at this point in the draft, we've reached the tier 2 wide receivers. And I think what's really funny about this group is that we all have a different order, a different ranking of these guys. I think there are about 4 of them in this tier. Um, but yeah, they all have the dream landing spots, which is funny. Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Lawrence are all the quarterbacks that are throwing in these next 4 guys. Um, and I think you guys would agree with me, which would mean uh, at least one has got to be incredible, 2 have got to be like decent, and 1 has probably got to bust, right? If I had to guess on how these guys would fare out or would pan out in the league. Um, what's really like confusing me is I don't think we don't know who like at all. We don't have a goddamn clue which one is going to be the incredible one. And I really don't think you guys do either. So I think this is just going to be like if you're picking at this point in the draft, pick your favorite and just play the lottery because I one of them's got to be incredible with those quarterbacks throwing them the balls, in my opinion. Um, just try your luck. Like I said, it's a lottery. For this specific mock draft, I have Jansen going BTJ, who was the consensus next guy up for a while, and then I've been a little bit surprised that he's fallen in ADP here recently. I think Ladd makes a lot of sense because he's got Herbert if he wants to do the stat game. But I'm thinking when Jansen was at 5, a guy like BTJ was in play, and to think to get him at 7 and get the return for the 105, I think this is a slam dunk. Um, so I think that's why I've got him going BTJ here at the 107. Um, Although if he really wants Ladd, I don't know if Ladd makes it to the 111 when he's picking next. So if he wants the stack, I'd say go with Ladd at the 7. But for this specific mock, I have him going Brian Thomas. Okay. Uh, at the 108. We've got Max again. He's already added um, Marv and Bowers. I don't know if I said he was taking Bowers at 4, but he took Bowers at 4 in this mock. Having added Marv and Bowers, I think um, Max is in a good spot to draft Xavier Worthy here, who I think he's going to be drafting a couple more receivers, if not another receiver, here later on. I'm going with Worthy here because I think Worthy is a little bit riskier, but when you're tied to Mahomes and you've got the first round draft capital, that is something we haven't seen yet. I think you gamble on it, and I really think that would be a nice upside play there for Max. And there's not a ton of pressure with this specific pick panning out because he did pick Bowers, he did pick Marv, and he's probably going to pick another receiver here later down the road. I think this is just an upside swing. I think this is what exactly what Max would need to do. 109. Trevor's up on the clock. I have him going Keon Coleman here. Now, at this point, if he likes Ladd better, I would not be surprised. But he has Kincaid on the team. I don't really hate the idea of just adding the receivers for the Bills. I think that is just not a bad idea. Just pairing up Kincaid and Coleman, all both tied to Josh Allen. I kind of like that. Um, and that's why it was a tiebreaker over Ladd for me. I mean, Trevor might like Ladd, but I don't know. So that's why I got Coleman going here at 109. 110. Riley's on the clock. Don't be fooled here. Riley's playing for the future. I think Benson is a slam dunk pick here. RB2 at the 10 at the 110 is unheard of in our league's history. Um, and Riley's probably going to I mean, has all the time in the world to just eat the first year of being behind James Conner. And then most likely increasing his value here in 2025 when he'll need him a little bit more than he does this year. So 110, Trey Benson to Riley, 111 to Jansen. Jansen probably sweated it out, but in this particular mock, Ladd is on the board. And I think that's a slam dunk pick. Pair him with Herbert to go along with BTJ. And I think he's pretty happy about how his first round ended up there. At the 112, Riley back up. I haven't taken Blake Corum. Even I hate this pick. I think I made this mock draft a while ago, like a week ago or something. But why not? This is another position, um, or running back in particular is a position that if some guy pops, you can get immense value really quickly if a guy pops. And I think that's what Riley's going to be trying to do. As I think he adds more draft capital, or wants to add more draft capital so he can make moves here in the future. So that's why I think rolling the dice on Blake Corum might be okay. I think the Rams do a good job of spreading out the ball, so I think he's still going to get his touches. So I kind of like this idea. Um, I don't know if he's a big fan of Pearsall or Leggett, but that's about the only two other guys I'd think I'd consider right here. Maybe Mitchell too, but I don't know. So I haven't gone Blake Corum. I don't think that's going to happen, but um, interesting to think about, honestly. 201. Max is on the clock. I haven't taken Xavier Leggett. At this point, it's Leggett or Pearsall, like I said, when Riley was on the clock. Thinking maybe the uncertainty with Ayuk might propel Pearsall to go above Leggett. But I do think Leggett is an absolute freak. I think he has a chance to be good right away. I think he's for sure the number 2 wide receiver from the get go behind Deontay, and I would not be surprised if they started handing him the ball on jet sweeps, reverses, gimmicky plays, because this guy is explosive and he's very fast. Uh, I kind of like it. I think this is his range going here early part of the second round. Best available is probably the best course of action for Max here. 202, I'm back on the clock. I have Pearsall take the last first round receiver remaining. If it's there, it makes the most sense. And I have another pick at 204, so let's not overthink it there. 203, Riley, I have him picking AD Mitchell, mostly for a homer pick. He's 6'2", ran a 4.3 40. There's not a lot of guys that do that are still on the board at the 203. So that it just kind of checks off a lot of boxes here, and makes sense for Riley. 204, I'm back on the clock. I go Ben Sinnott. I've drafted three receivers, a quarterback, and a running back so far, so I might as well sprinkle in the tight end here. Second round draft capital for tight end. Perhaps a huge fall off after in terms of draft capital after Sanat, so not too upset with an overdraft here because I think he's going a little bit later, mid to late second rounder in consensus. Um, so that's why I have Benson not going to me at 204. 205, Max is on the clock. Jaden Daniels, I have it going to him. Have him going to Max's team. Max picked what, three wide receivers and a tight end. Needs a quarterback, and just so happens that the second best quarterback is on the board here at the 205, which is a dream for Max. Great rushing upside, which is really critical in fantasy. Very underrated situation. Terry Dotson. They added McCaffrey, Sanat. They've got a lot of young guys with some upside that this could be a much improved offense going forward. So Jane Daniels at 205 to Max. Moving on to 206, Kyle's on the board. I haven't taken Jalen Polk. He's the 37th overall pick and a wide open receiving room. Bet on Drake May improving that offense. I think this is what you would call an educated swing. It's next best receiver I think that's available. I think he's got the best shot to lead that wide receiver room out of all the guys they got. 207, Dakota, Malachi Corley. Now, I made this draft like a week ago, and I maybe expect Malachi Corley to drop because there was camp news that Xavier Gibson was challenging him for the wide receiver role in New York. But I believe Yak guys are kind of king in fantasy, and they'll get you those extra bonus points, especially in a PPR of um, half PPR league of over 10 yards reception. I think that could really pay dividends down the road. And Malachi Corley is one of the best in the draft at Yak. So I have him going Malachi Corley at 207. 208, Tommy Drake May. Desmond Ritter's his backup quarterback to Allen, and that's just not going to cut it right now. It's an upside swing. Probably would want to go with a position player here, but I just think that right now, 208, Drake May is just the best player available left on the board, so I'm going to have to go with him there. At 209, Max, I had him taking Marshawn Lloyd. Should be the number two back in Green Bay with Jacobs potentially one and done with the Packers if he has an underwhelming year this year. You might as well shake it up, right? Spread the wealth. Like I said, he's gone quarterback, he's gone receiver multiple times, he's gone tight end. Why not go with the first running back in the teardrop here? I don't really love any other receivers at this point for him, especially with already taking quite a few. Um, I think Marshawn Lloyd is going to get some carries, and Max has, been proven to take some guys, running backs that are sitting behind other running backs, if that makes any sense. So I like Marshawn Lloyd here. At this point, you're just, you know, throwing darts at a board blindfolded. Uh, the 210, Kyle's back on the clock. I have him going Troy Franklin, a guy that probably would have been long gone had he had better draft capital. Um, he's reunited with Bo Nix here in Denver, and he posted a 14-yard receiving season last year. I just don't think you're finding guys at the 210 with 1,400 receiving yards from the year prior, and I just think you got to give it a go. Maybe believe that the NFL GMs were wrong and that this was an absolute steal here in the fourth round. Well, second round of rookie draft, fourth round, and actual NFL draft. Kind of like this pick for Kyle here at the 210 with Troy Franklin. 211, Tommy, Jalen Wright. Kind of don't like this one either as time has gone on, but I got to think that Mostert's got to be a year or two out from being absolute dust. And I think Wright and Achane would be a fun 1-2 punch. As this offense has supported two top 10 running backs in the past, so you guys probably would know better than me, but Achane and Mostert, I think were close last year to being top two or definitely two RB1s, but top 10 might be a stretch. But I like this at at 211 for Tommy. I just said I didn't like it, but take a swing. Who else are you going to take at this point? At the 212, I've got Dakota taking Roman Wilson. Will probably be blocking most of the time under Arthur Smith's regime, offensive scheme, I should say, not regime. But yeah, he's a number two receiver in theory on the Steelers. 212 seems like good value for a number two receiver on an NFL team, in my opinion. Back up to the 301. Max is on the clock. I'm having him go JJ McCarthy. Double up on a QB and maybe play the quarterback odds a little bit more. Baker Daniels and McCarthy turns Max's quarterback room into something that isn't just like disgusting of just Baker Mayfield. I think it'd be kind of fun. I mean, I don't know who else you're taking, like an upside swing on one of these late round receivers or late round running backs, late round tight ends. Like, I don't know. This is the guy with the best draft capital left on the board. So this is why I have him going in JJ McCarthy at 301. 302, I have Kyle taking Kamani Vidal, running back for the Chargers. I don't think Kyle will take a Chargers player, but I do believe someone in this league by now will buy the hype on Vidal, who got the best running back landing spot by far, and a Harbaugh Chargers-led offense. Only problem is he's a sixth-round pick. It's not very sexy draft capital, but the ingredients are there for him to be a potential impact player, especially when I don't know, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins are the only two in front of him. If he's any good, he could probably beat those guys out. That's what I'm thinking. And I think the 302 is an interesting time to to snipe. You know, who else you going? Like this is all a bunch of crap here in the third round, in my opinion. Um, I'm back up at the 303. I'm taking Luke McCaffrey. Um, I'm a big fan of taking guys that we probably all hate because they usually tend to overperform. And that is my only basis on this. I have no idea who I'm taking at 303 at all. But as things usually shake up, somebody usually falls. So that's why this early part of the third round should be kind of interesting. Yeah, moving on to the 304. I've got Max taking Jermaine Burton. Why not? Higgins is a little bit uncertain. Could fill the Tyler Boyd role in the offense, which I think is pretty good value here at the third round. I think that's all you can really ask for. 305. Tommy's on the clock. I have him going Ray Davis. Give him some more bills. Maybe he can get some goal line tuds when Allen doesn't get it. Then he'll be walking away with 6 points every time they go into the red zone. In theory, I don't know. I haven't paid attention to the third round if I'm being honest. Moving on to the 306. Dakota. Jalen McMillan, solid guy. Should be the Bucks wide receiver 3. Looked the part at Washington alongside Jalen Polk and Rome Odunze. Just was injured this year, which is why I think his draft capital kind of took a little bit of a hit, but he still got drafted in the third round. Kind of like this here for Dakota here. Jansen on the board at 307 or on the clock. Jatavion Sanders. I think this guy was a lock for the second round. But now with draft capital, I think he fell. I think it was in the fourth round, and then it's still available here in the third round, and he's got a clear path to be the starter in Carolina, as I think he only has to beat like Tommy Tremble or somebody out like that. Pretty good value here at the 307 if I do say so myself. Dakota back on the board with the 308. He's got I haven't taken Javon Baker. Pat's wide receiver room, like I said, for Polk is a little bit uncertain. And then there's kind of a world out there where Baker could be the number one. He's already got Pop Douglas on the team, so it just really increases his odds. Not that the Patriots wide receiver room is a sought after position, but who knows if May's good, it might be a really good sneaky landing spot. Kind of like this pick here. This guy's talented, and I think this is pretty good value. 309, Max on the clock. I haven't taken Braylon Allen. On the sole reason being he loves taking Jets running backs that aren't Breece Hall. And he's a big dude, so he might get some goal line work. That's the only thing I can think of. Irv at 310, I have him taking Audric Estime, running back out of Notre Dame. Take a swing on a backfield we know nothing about. Might work, might not, but that's the third round for you. Audric Estime at the 310. 311, Riley is on the board. I have him taking Michael Penix. doubt this is the pick, but a sit and wait for a potential elite offense when Riley might need him, might pay off when he's closer um, to wanting to win. So I kind of like this pick for Riley. Set him on the taxi squad for a couple years, like Jordan Love was for Kyle. Um, Play the long game. And last but not least, the 312 Lewis is on the board. I haven't taken Eric All. Like I said, with his team needs, I think he really needs tight end help. This is the next best available tight end. I think he likes him. How can you not? Paired with Burrow, went to Iowa. The ingredients are there for an impactful NFL player, if I do say so myself. Um, but yeah, that is a full 3 round mock draft that we just cranked out with a little bit of commentary. I really appreciate you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Draft is coming up. I'm excited. Should be a good time. All right. Peace out.